And welcome to the Agronomists, everybody. I'm your host, Shaun Haney, tonight, filling in for Lindsay Smith. It's great to be here. This is one of our favorite programs of the week, and it's great to be live with you here tonight as we know the combines are rolling across the country. Obviously, there's good yields in some parts of the country. Eastern Canada being the focus of that, and out west, well, it's a little less to leaving some on the table, and we wish it was a bit more. Tonight we're going to cover a topic that obviously is getting a lot of press. We're going to talk about cover crops. Depending on where you are in the country, this is probably a strategy that has a very nice fit. You've heard about your neighbors maybe trying it and dabbling in it, and maybe you're interested in getting started, or maybe you're a wily veteran and you have something to add to tonight's conversation. That's all good. We're going to have a whole bunch of different levels of questions. I'm going to be more probably on the elementary side, but that's why we got two great panelists to help fill us in here tonight. Really looking forward to their commentary. And of course, with all of our Agronomist episodes, you can get CCA, CEU credits. All you got to do is to sign up for our agronomist email, and then we actually email you when you can sign up, and that goes out on Tuesday morning. Go to realagriculture.com/agronomists, and if you have any troubles, just send me an email at shaney@realagriculture.com. Also want to mention before we get started, tomorrow morning we have a special agronomist episode. I'm doing two this week. One is not enough. We're going to be doing a special agronomist tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. It's for our Ontario Diagnostic Days, and we've got a really 4 great videos, and we're going to be focusing on things like corn rootworm, tar spot. Tar spot, we talked about that on Real Ag Radio today. Big time problem. Albert Tenuta, who will be one of our panelists, is all over that one. We'll also be joined by Tracy Bowdy as well. So tune in tomorrow, realagriculture.com/live for a special agronomist focused on Ontario Diagnostic Days. The diagnostic videos tomorrow are absolutely outstanding. Let's bring in our panel. Here we go. Bring them in. And they're a wily bunch. Hey, up first, it is Dr. Dave Hooker out of University of Guelph, Ridgetown campus. Dave, how are you?
I'm great. Doing well.
Yeah. How are the crops looking around you?
Well, they are. I was a guest on the Agronomists in June, at the end of June, and I said last June that the crops look exceptional, and I have to say that the crops still look exceptional in most areas of the province. I know in the eastern Ontario, it's getting fairly dry, and in Midwestern Ontario, they could use the rain, but in general, the crops look quite exceptional, and almost too exceptional in terms of vegetative wise, because we're concerned about white mold and things like that in soybeans.
Well, nice tease, Dave. You're good job. You're a veteran here on the Agronomist. White mold will be one of the diseases we talk about tomorrow as well. Actually, you're in that video with Albert Tenuta, the two of you out in a field talking. You're looking at some soybeans on 30-inch rows and the canopy closed, and perfect candidate for trying to control that white mold. So looking forward to that. Also joining us is Dan Petker. He farms out in Port Rowan. Hey, Dan, how are you?
Wonderful.
It's great to have you here. Hey, today on Real Ag Radio, Peter Johnson said that I don't know anybody that can grow red clover like Dan Petker. So there you go. We got the expert here today, Dan.
Boy. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Thanks, Pete.
Okay, Dave, we're talking about cover crops. There's a lot of different options when it comes to cover crops. We're going to try to hone in here at the beginning really on red clover. And Dave, why is red clover the cover crop fit if you can get it established?
Well, I'm telling you that there's no better research data set that we have on any cover crop than red clover. We have many years, decades of data on red clover that the red clover essentially has proved its worth, especially if we can establish a good stand, and that's kind of the key and the challenge, and we could talk more about that later. And so I had an opportunity, I guess, to make a whole bunch of videos from my teaching last fall. And last fall, of course, we were not face to face; we were totally online, and so I got to do make some videos. And we had just a very intro plant science cover crop lab, and we talked about one of the things that we talked about is red clover as a cover crop. And so I just, Shaun, could you just roll that intro red clover video clip,
Yeah.
and I'll just kind of speak through it.
Okay, give
and
me a
I
second.
have lots of fun. Sure.
Okay.
Right.
So hold on here. The intro one.
Yeah.
In red clover intro. Here we go.
Yeah. So I have lots of fun making these videos. Yeah, and roll around in the cover crop field, and just to make students laugh and remember. And so I took them to, like, virtually a cover crop experiment of one of my colleagues, Dr. Laura Vineyard. And we looked at a number of different cover crops, but this one, of course, highlighted red clover. And this very thick standard red clover, and it just proves its worth just visually, just by looking at the soil and the aggregation and the soil structure that the red clover provides. And I do have a side-by-side that shows on the left, it shows a corn, soybean rotation, wheat rotation with no red clover versus a corn, soybean, wheat rotation with red clover. And these are side-by-side, just a few meters apart. And you could just notice the soil structure differences between the red clover with and without red clover. And so that's just one advantage of red clover, of course. And there are many other advantages, nitrogen benefits. And of course, you've got some reduced erosion, and weed control is just fantastic. It's a fantastic competitor versus weeds. And so we have all kinds of different benefits and pluses of red clover. And so I just thought, that might be a good video to start this discussion on.
Absolutely. You can definitely see the differences there. So, Dan, this is something that you've had a lot of success with. Why is red clover such an important part of your cover crop plan?
For us, it's basically, it's been the original cover crop for southwestern Ontario for decades. Nothing's really changed in the clovers that, I don't know, we're just successful with it, and we know it fits. It overwinters really well. It handles our own regional kind of environmental stresses quite well. It's beautiful. It's awesome to look at in the summertime. I mean, it just has everything I want. Once we put it on, I don't think about it again until November. Like, it's the perfect cover crop.
Now, is this may be a really dumb question, so bear with me, guys. Does it only fit with wheat?
We do have some spread into our soybeans as of 2 weeks ago. So we'll see what kind of catch that turns into for next year. I think to maximize the end credit gain, it needs to be seeded sooner, just like alfalfa. Like, they won't be sending signals out to rhizobia to nodulate and to really start kind of locking in nitrogen until there's a good growthy plant where there's protein within it, which is mostly nitrogen. So with wheat, it's just a perfect window to get this thing going. Dave probably knows a bit better than I.
Of course, oat and barley, it would fit great.
Yeah, any cereal
rotations as well. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. You know what? I'll ask John's question. John says red clover's great for sure. What about tillage radish? Who wants to tackle that one? Okay, I'll pick Dave. Go ahead.
Silence. Well, tillage radish, every cover crop species really has a fit or a purpose, and they all have pluses, they all have minuses. And tillage radish is a great, it takes up nitrogen, a huge amount of nitrogen, and so I think that's the greatest plus of tillage radish. And some folks say that it does an excellent job at breaking compacted layers. And so with me personally, I'm not sure what Dan's opinion would be, but I kind of question that compaction buster effect of of tillage radish. And some studies that shows actually maybe it might create some compaction, especially if you got those roots expanding, making big holes in the soil like that. There's that compaction around the holes itself. So I'm not sure about the compaction. I think it does have a number of advantages. And probably I would not seed a solid stand of tillage radish just because maybe the effect of maybe too many roots might plug up tile drains, and especially if seeded early. And so tillage radish would be very, I think, good as part of a cover crop species or a mix of cover crop species. But apart from that, I still like red clover.
Yeah, and to speak for the tillage radish part, so we practice controlled traffic on our farm, and the wonderful part of that is you always know where your compaction runs are, and the terrible part of it is you always know where your compaction runs are. So what we tried a trial. That'd be 3 years ago now. 3 years ago and 5 years. So 3 and 5. And what we did was we spread our red clover, but we left a 12-foot section wherever our primary controlled traffic runs were for our planters and all our equipment. So everything's based off of 40 feet. So 40, 80, 120. And then on that 40-foot center section where our planter or our tractor is 12 feet wide, we went and drilled different covers to try to break the compaction. And the only thing that truly broke it was a cover crop that lasted for more than 3 months. So that would be a deep-rooted taproot like our clovers, or something hyperfibrous. So buckwheat, some of the canolas, but they only go so far. The tillage radish was the most disappointing because it had the most kind of promise. And what we found was on some of those hard runs, we were pushing out of the ground before we once we hit the hard playing floor, and it just started pushing root up. And that little pencil, it still needs a certain amount of PSI to break through that thing. And it's just physics. And it starts to go sideways, and it won't break through. Where if you grow clover in your wheat or in your cereal and you have enough time to grow it for a while, that root's still going to go sideways, but it will find a crack and it'll go boop and down. And once it's through that crack, then you start getting laterals, and then you break that hard pan layer.
Oh, very cool. Ty says need a little N to get much growth of the tillage radish on heavier soils.
Very true.
Question here from Pete. It's a good one because when we're talking about red clover, a lot of times we're talking about the east, right? We don't hear out west, we hear a lot more and more about cover crops, but it is more about the tillage radish kind of stories and crops like that. We don't hear a lot about red clover. Obviously, there is a drought this year, so it can be tough to grow anything of any sort. But let's assume a normal year. Pete asked, what about red clover where Jason or Lara are, which is Manitoba and Saskatchewan? Is there any value to red clover in the west? Anybody have a thought on that? We're testing you guys. That's a good one.
I guess to me, it's just a matter of recognizing growing windows and windows where your plants will just kind of senesce or wait for the winter. When I think about this now, you think, when do we seed alfalfa? And to me, I want to seed clover a little bit sooner than that. But then you got to leave the clover for a while. Like alfalfa, you're going to have in that field for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Where red clover has a very specific window. Like it could be there as a crop, as a grazing crop or something, but if it's just a matter of having a root growing, we need to find something that goes fast, especially in those kind of shorter window areas, fast and fibrous. So I don't know if clover is quite the fit.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was looking for maybe some input and experience from Western Canada. There's probably quite a following here in the discussion. And so maybe the discussion or the comment section should lead this one. I'm not sure. But red clover is, it needs to develop a root system just like any plant does in order to start growing. And so if that root system is not established, if it's in a dry condition, it will take some time or growth will slow down considerably. It does not have a taproot like alfalfa does. and so it's a little bit more susceptible to drought compared to alfalfa. But red clover does have excellent low light tolerance, and so it can tolerate low light. And so quite a few experiments have looked at red clover interseeded in corn as well, and in other high biomass crops as a possible interseeded crop.
Well, here, you know what, Dave, you asked, and Jason stepped up. He says, I think it can have a huge fit, especially for tilth, but end return to the soil. My biggest challenge is establishment. Well, that sounds familiar. Right? So why is red clover so hard? Why is red clover so hard to establish no matter where we are farming? Dave, you tell us the challenge, and then Dan is going to give us here's how I solve those problems. So Dave, why is it a problem?
So I think the benefits of red clover, I think everyone knows the benefits of red clover. I have tried to grow red clover on my farm for decades, ever since I was a kid. My dad underseeded the wheat with red clover for a good reason, because he knew, or he recognized, the benefits of red clover. And of course, quite a few have do this as a good practice, as a best management practice. But we have situations or these environmental interactions that causes poor stands of red clover or variable stands of red clover, which really complicates the management of red clover. And so much so that folks get frustrated with the species, with this best management practice, if red clover is not uniformly distributed throughout the field. Like, we're going to talk about nitrogen credits and whatnot probably a little bit later, and Dan has a really awesome spreadsheet on nitrogen credits. But if that red clover is variable throughout the field, then it introduces so many more questions. Like, in those bare spots, what do you do with them? Those spots may need a cover crop more than other places in the field that maybe red clover has established. So we have a very complex management scenario that arises when we have variable red clover stands in the field. So Shaun, I have this another video clip.
Oh, okay.
And actually, I shot this with my drone last night, and have a field, a neighbor, and he underseeded his wheat into red clover, and it just I didn't ask permission to do this, so maybe if he's watching, he might recognize the field, but it just underlines. It always asks permission. I just did not a best management practice there. But
hey, we got to get the information out. We're rolling.
That's right.
Ask for forgiveness.
That's right.
Ask for forgiveness.
That's right. Yeah, later. That's right. It's much easier later. That's right.
Okay.
So if you could just run that video clip.
Okay, give me a second here. Here we go.
Sure.
It is
kind of talk over
red clover variability. That one.
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, so awesome stand of red clover there. But as soon as you get out of this patch of great looking red clover, we have very noticeable variable areas, spatially variable red clover in the field. And this just adds frustration to the practice. And so, of course, there's some options there, but as you can see throughout the field, it's just some areas in the field, much better establishment than others. So especially you see huge areas, no red clover, other areas, very good stand. But in this field, there's not many. There's a poor stand in 95% of the field. And of course, if I had this field, I would be introducing other cover crop options. Okay. So this is quite typical. This is quite typical, I think. A lot of fields, some fields are not this bad or not this variable, but if this was my field, absolutely, I would be probably seeding another crop into this field.
Okay, so because I was just going to ask you that. When I look at this, I'm like, okay, what's the point? We've failed. It hasn't established, and so even though if I scroll back to the beginning, where it's like, wowzers, like that looks amazing. it's a small percentage of the field overall, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
Okay, so Dan, how what's your process? How do you avoid that like that the look of what we just saw?
Well, first, like, I'm amazed at that because I haven't seen that in 6, 7, 8 years. Like, I don't like. It's amazing to me, and I sometimes have to hold back my exuberance for red clover because that video right there is quite common. So our approach has been a lot of research. So basically, like, Peter Johnson has a lot of research showing some of the stuff we do doesn't work or doesn't matter, but somehow it all does for us. So basically, what happened, let's say 10 years ago, we started playing with row width on wheat. So we did 7.5s, which is standard for the area, 10s and 20-inch rows. We noticed the best catch in 20s, the most consistent catch in 20s. And then we tried to figure out what to tweak in the seeding rate. So now we're up to 12 pounds all the time. And then we've upped our sulfur rate on our wheat when we top dress our wheat because legumes really, really want sulfur, and we are sulfur deficient where we are, especially early on. Like, once we start mineralizing, things kind of balance out. So now we're throwing on 15 to 20 pounds of actual sulfur. Our other biggest thing was we got rid of certain group 2 herbicides. They're completely gone out of the rotation. And we're able to do that because we only grow crusher soybeans, like no IPs. So if you're growing IPs, something like Classic and First Rate, like those are, and Pursuit, those are in heavy reliance or under heavy reliance. We're going to do some trials this coming year with Volterra, so group 14 residual herbicides, just to kind of play with that and see how clovers react. But really, to me, it seems quite simple. And we go quite early. We go the 3rd week of February, the start of the 4th week of February. There's still about an inch or 2 of snow on the farm. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's absolutely amazing. There, Peter just right there says, but sulfur is a huge part of our program. And if you just consider the wheat crop, you should only be putting 10 to 12 pounds of sulfur on, but I'm growing a clover crop. And the wheat is
Mm-hmm.
a partner in it, because the clover crop gains me huge. Hey, Warren, the 12-pound rate normally around here was 6 to 8 pounds.
Okay.
So we see a consistent and variability in 6 pounds. And what we thought, or our thinking is, and those with more knowledge than I can critique or whatever, we notice, or we think we see less, or no, we still have like a certain range of mortality of the seed, be it from predation of mice or just drought, or it goes down the cracks or whatever. So now we're just kind of like throwing a nuke spread of clover to force it to be successful. And we've gone up to 18 pounds, and 12 pounds has been our sweet spot.
So is that like it's a difference in mentality? You said we're growing a clover crop as well, right? So for some people, it's like, I'm growing the wheat. The clover's like a secondary thing because I'm going to plow it under anyway.
Who plows?
Well, you don't. Okay. Well, I'm going to till it in anyway.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
The P word.
Yeah. Sorry. I get everybody excited. Yeah. Sorry about that. Ryan asks, do you think the low sulfur has effect on forage grasses too?
We see it. We see crappy Timothy where we have low sulfur, or low sulfur available. Yeah, basically, low sulfur.
Yeah. Okay. So I think Dan and I have had great discussions on Twitter about this, and people are amazed. Like, Dan has an incredible following on Twitter. And we are all just amazed on what he can do in terms of growing a good catch, a red clover. And we want to know, everybody wants to know what the secrets are. And so he mentioned sulfur, he mentioned herbicides, but others have tried that. Say, well, I don't apply any group 2, or I always apply like lots of sulfur to my wheat crop. and yet my red clover stands are variable. And I think this is one of the biggest frustrations with red clover is that people have there's lots of suggestions, I guess, that this is the cause. This is the cause for poor red clover establishment. I think, like in my long-term trials, I've noticed poor establishment as well. In my long-term rotation trial, we don't use any group 2s in there, and we apply sulfur to our wheat. And so we still have variable stands of red clover, but we do have some factors, that may be associated with poor stands of red clover, and one of them is dry weather. So dry weather, especially from like 2 weeks before anthesis through anthesis, that window there, it seems to be most critical in terms of red clover survival. And that's because leaf area index in wheat tends to be the highest around anthesis time or flowering time. And then there's then the light as well. Light reaching red clover. Red clover tends to be very low light tolerant, but still that's another factor. But I think those are two big factors. But those other factors that you mentioned, Dan, I think they are significant factors. But I think red clover plants, when they're underseeded into wheat, like chances are they're just thinking stress. And so we've got all these multiple stresses, and some of these stresses can be additive or synergistic. And I think that's what we're dealing with. We're just dealing with multiple stresses, and a lot of those stresses tend to be additive. And tillage is another one there, because no-till, we've noticed red clover stands more sporadic or more variable in a no-till environment, which doesn't make sense, Dan, because you're essentially no-till or zone
right.
till.
Yeah,
And
like
so
we strip
it
till our
doesn't.
corn and everything
Yeah.
else is no-tilled.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of think about this. Well, I think about it a lot because red clover, we need it in Ontario farms, and I'll apologize to our people from Western Canada, but I'm going to start giving this more thought. Like, how does it work within your rotations? Where I live right on the north shore of Lake Erie, so I'm blessed or cursed with rainfall. There'll be times where we'll plant corn May 1st, and I won't plant corn again until May 28th. That's terrible for my corn and soybean crop, but it's amazing for my clover and my wheat. We've been blessed the last 3 years with wonderful clover growing weather. Our wheat crops are, I don't know, this year we were 125, 126 bushel. One year we ran 150 bushel on average, and our clover stand was phenomenal. So it's got to be partly regional too, I assume, or I presume. But it all goes hand in hand with those other little factors of the biggest thing was getting rid of Pursuit and Classic for us. Maybe that's maybe it's around more in my clay soils. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that I would love to just test, but I don't have the money or the time.
I think you're doing a pretty good job. I'm going to catch everybody up. The chat is very, very active, which is great to see. People commenting from across the country. Ryan makes a comment here: red clover underseeded under barley, quite common here in PEI, but causes disease issues in spuds. Earlier, Tate asked a question about red clover under drought conditions. Peter Johnson said, in a drought, leave the moisture for the crop. Cover crops are almost for sure doomed to fail under drought. Do we agree with that, guys?
I agree.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, even with with cover crops, they don't make us, well, they make us money eventually, but our sustainability is on a year by year cycle as well as a long term. So if it's a droughty year, we've had dry years for corn where I refuse to put any interseed into my corn. It's just why would I add that extra stress or the extra expense on a crop that's not doing so great?
So Ty says sweet clover looks promising. It grew higher than the red clover, so that could be a concern. Any thoughts on sweet
really
clover?
Tall.
Really tall?
It goes really tall.
So it's not a little higher, it's a lot higher?
It's too high. It'll grow above the wheat like where I am, like right now, we use all double cut red clover. This year being the monster year for clover that it has been for us, we were taking about 3 to 4 inches of clover material into the combine just to harvest, I don't know, 90% of our tillers in our wheat. It was slow going. There was one farm, I have a video, so I'll post it sometime, where all that was coming out of the combine was green. Like it was just like a forage harvester going through. But that was a weird experiment yeah.
Dan, I am just amazed. And your wheat crop was not like a 50 bushel wheat crop. It was
No. Like this was a money making crop.
150, right?
Yeah, okay, so you mentioned that, Dave. So Peter Johnson asked a question, but Dan grows 150 bushels an acre wheat. Dave, why is Dan's red clover less stressed?
So I don't know. Maybe we should all visit. Maybe we should all visit Dan's and do some very intensive measurements.
Road trip.
And I've got, road trip. We should be just, I should be writing a proposal right now. Visit Dan Petker's farm.
Hey, I'm in.
Though, I think it's rain. Like I chalk it up to rainfall events. Like we're in a spot where I will get an inch of rain, and you go 2 concessions north, so basically a kilometer and a half, and it was bone dry. And I'll get those rain events when nobody else does, and we'll get, like on a normal year, I will get one of those in July, one of those in August, and one in September. Like it's crazy, but it just comes bursting in off the lake, and I think that is a huge part of it. So if you have a pivot up over your wheat, that might help. I don't know.
We had some Dan. You were talking about seeding rates earlier. I'm scrolling back through the chat here. Farmer Schneck, watching on YouTube, says, "Does the 30% more seed eliminate the variability in the stand, or just mask it by getting something established everywhere?" And there's a follow-up here. For example, the spots that have nothing in Dave's video would have enough with the extra seed.
So really quickly, like for our farms, yes, to both. Like it just we're just blanketing everything. Where we have seen variability on fields, I start to wonder if we had put alfalfa, which is or like white clover, or like some sort of very similar analog species, would it also have trouble establishing? And if it does, what's our limiting factor on that? Because you've blanketed out, that's not the plant species. There might be something else. Well, there is something else.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I probably another species might work. We talk about multi-species mixtures and other cover crop, I guess seedings, and when life is not good for one species, another species could might be better, and so that could be the case here, or maybe we should be mixing red clover with another species like white clover or something that may be just different. But still, we don't know what is causing those zero stands in a lot of places in some fields. And if we tripled our seeding rate of red clover, it's still going to be a zero stand. Like only 10% of the seed that is a red clover seed that we seed actually could germinate and produce good plants. And so that's our success. And if we triple that in an area where it is difficult to stand, it's still zero, probably. It might reduce variability a little bit, but it's still, I don't think, is the answer. We talked about...
Go ahead. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
Because this is the interesting part is, so we know there's regions in the farm that fail, and we will assume that they fail consistently. So now we go start blocking those out, and we do little spread patterns of different legumes. And if they all fail, there's a reason why a legume is failing, or those small seeded legumes. Like Alsiki is as an option, Dutch white clover, like those, all these other ones. But there's got to be like where you and I are both quite reductive thinkers. That's a good thing. So we have to figure out why, right? And now it's like, so is it all small seeded legumes fail here, and if so, why? Or does something fit? I don't know.
Okay. Oh man, I
Yeah.
like there is some great stuff coming up
The chat's
in the
awesome.
chat here. Okay, I'm gonna try to do these in a little bit of order here. I don't know if Phil actually finished his thought, but I'm going to read what he put here. He said, this is from Phil Shaw, who obviously farms down in Dresden. A lot of people know him. I find the deep southwest of Ontario less and less red clover is used. It interferes with the stale seedbed preparation going on now for next year. The problems with stand establishment makes, and I haven't seen the rest of the comment. Dave, does that resonate with you? Make sense?
Stale what?
He says stale
Just kidding.
seedbed.
Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding, Phil. Well, we are trying to. I think a lot of folks wish to have a system or develop a system or grow a system where you have something living as many months and weeks of the year as possible. And really, the stale seedbed, I think, is an interesting idea. It reduces, I guess, tillage before, let's say, corn in the spring. But for me personally, I do not like stale seedbed just because it's always nice to have living roots as much as possible, or as much as possible in the environment, rather than intensive tillage the year before and nothing growing in it until the crop is planted next spring. So I don't think that's really common, but if that system, of course, works for you, I think it really limits cover crop opportunities in that case. And I think, to be honest, I think it's almost a different subject, a different system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joey, watching on YouTube, says, when I was little, my dad put soup spoons on the ends of our MF33 seed tubes to spread out the hay seed. He also bumped up the seeding rate. We always had a great alfalfa stand doing this. Farmer Schneck asks, is there a soil characteristic that suits red clover best? I see it often interseeding cereal rye into corn. pH imbalances show up very clearly. Soil texture changes as well.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's just, it's biology and soil physics. Like it's if you don't have certain things in the right way. I'm on a soil where my neighbors 5 minutes north of me, they start liming their soils with Dolomag every 2 to 3 years. I lime once every 7 or 8. Our biggest issues is phosphorus. Like we have low phosphorus levels. So I get excited when I hit phosphorus levels of 12, 13, where I have 12 or 13 levels of phosphorus, though, I have easily my best clover establishment. So what we've done now that I think about this, because we've been doing these things by standard, normally people will put 100 pounds of MAP down when they seed their wheat. We're at 150 to 200 pounds. And what got us thinking that way was where sometimes you overlap or you dump too much or you have overflow. We noticed like these patches of clover that were 3 to 4 inches taller than everything else or thicker. So small, tiny seed, small, tiny root, very low P interception. So you put more P out just to get it established.
Okay. Question from Jason. Could we establish red clover with canola like we do with perennial ryegrass? With the protection of the canola in the row, what would its tolerance to liberty be, or the competition for canola? Dave, have you seen any of that in your research at all?
I have not. I would have no idea. To be honest,
I do.
I don't know.
Oh.
So I like messing around with herbicides.
Oh, please describe. When you
Yeah,
say you like to
but
mess around with herbicides, what does that all involve?
just a quick note to Mr. Tate about MAP price, because I see it in the chat price or in the chat there. MAP is super expensive. We won't be doing that high of MAP for our wheat this year. Like, it's all about balancing economics and agronomy, right? So if pricing is too high for something, throw away the thing that you want to do, or find a balance within it. So back to Liberty and Clover, it ruins Clover until you're about the 5th or 6th trifoliate. Like, it is, do not do it. Once you're by about 6th trifoliate to, I don't know, 8, 9, you really kick it in the nuts. And after that, you can spray it and you'll be fine. But it's a hardy plant by the 10th, 12th trifoliates. But when it's little, it is death. Red clover, all you can do is spray MCPA and bromoxynil, really.
Okay. Gord, watching on YouTube, says, would it be possible to compile data like on fertility, herbicide history, moisture, seeding rate, etc., and analyze to determine what factors are interacting to foster or prevent establishment? Dave, sounds like we got to write up a proposal.
Yeah, well, that has been tried. The research. Yeah, the research has been done. A lot of research has been done on trying to figure out this red clover establishment or variability. And all of those factors have been looked at. On the main campus, Dr. Bill Dean looked at these rainout shelters, to induce drought, compared drought versus a non-drought or rain-fed, different light characteristics, different row widths in wheat, different varieties or cultivars. That's been tried as well. And so we've got all these factors that point, the risk is a little bit better or a little bit less in one scenario versus another, but it really doesn't give us a good answer. It's not a silver bullet. We talk about, and I was going to mention before, but we talk about these risk factors or a ladder of risk factors when we look at, disease potential for corn, soybeans, or wheat or other crops. And I just see the same kind of concept here for red clover establishment and variability as well. There's a ladder. There's many risks involved. And it's just, there's a lot of environmental interactions there, and it's tough to point to one. And have good statistical confidence, that this factor is the cause or that factor is the cause, because probably it's a number of factors that are interacting, and that's the most challenging. That's why it's challenging.
Yeah. Okay. Where was I here? Here it is, right below. Johnson wants to know, do you think choice of wheat variety makes a difference?
Dan, why don't you answer that one?
Like,
you're the wheat variety guy.
No, but you know what? Maybe it's because of that.
Okay, well, hold on. What is that?
That was a Pioneer shirt.
Oh, okay.
But no, like, really, I don't see it. Like, we grow short-statured wheats. We grow tall.
Yeah.
We grow like these bushy ones. Like in our row width trials of wheat, we notice wheat will go like, so when we plant 10-inch wheat or twin row 20s, you'll see wheat like it goes like this, and then it just like a bouquet of flowers. It'll open up like that. So you may not get complete row closure or canopy, but it'll come pretty dang close, like similar to a 7.5. But we still get good establishment. We actually are going to try some 5-inch wheat this year just to see if we can do that and make clover work. But I haven't seen wheat variety make a difference. And we've grown 7 or 8 different wheat varieties over the years.
Question here for Dave from Soils at Guelph, watching on YouTube. That initial shot, Dave, was that the entrance to the field? Any history of manure? Is that a compaction wheel traffic effect?
Yeah, that was the field entrance, and it was a compacted area in the field, and the wheat was probably had maybe 50% of the yield as the rest of the field did, just because of that compaction and wheel traffic and moving grain out of the field. That was the main entrance way into and out of the field. And so that it just underlines, the effect that wheat productivity, the competition induced by wheat to the red clover, it does have an impact on red clover establishment.
Okay. Should we maybe show the? I wonder if we should show the Pat Lynch video of. Or sorry, what were you gonna say, Dan?
Well, I was just going to say, like right now, we're all focusing on the struggles of red clover, and that'll keep the kind of pessimism alive in people's minds and hearts. Let's show the excitement of why we want to figure out red clover works. And Dave has some beauty charts showing the economic kind of boost of why we want to do these things. And this is what really tipped us over for Southwestern Ontario, or for ourselves.
I love that you I was doing such a good job producing this show and trying to host at the same time, and now you're going to challenge me trying to pull these graphics up. Okay, that's fine. That's good. So, Dave, which graph do you want me to pull up?
First of all, thanks, Dan, for that suggestion. I almost forgot about those graphs. Yeah. The reason why we're just scratching our head because of all these issues, because we know the tremendous benefit. We want those benefits, right? And so that's why we want to make this red clover system work. So we're so very excited about that. That's right. So just a few words, I guess, from or some data from my long-term crop rotation trial that I have at Ridgetown. And first of all, let's look at the red clover corn yield slide, Shaun.
Red clover. Is that the corn yield response to soil N capacity?
No, it's called red clover corn yield.
Corn yields after wheat, red clover. Perfect. Okay. Give me a second.
All right.
Is it on the screen?
Yep, it is.
Perfect.
Yeah, and so we have, in my long-term crop rotation trial, we have all the wheat plots are split between red clover and no red clover. And where we have sufficient amount of nitrogen fertilizer applied, we have a 6.7 bushel per acre yield advantage. And so this is kind of a different slide right here that you're seeing now. But the corn yield advantage.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. That's okay. My bad. There, I fixed it. No, I didn't.
No.
There we go. I fixed it. Oh, yes. Cheapers. Sorry.
So 6.7 bushel per acre advantage, where we have corn yield advantage, where we had red clover in the previous year. And so that's before we take any other benefits into consideration, like nitrogen credit and whatnot. But 6.7 bushel, like that's a tremendous yield increase, and that's across tillage systems. Now, I have to say that the yield response in a no-till system, we don't have quite that yield response compared to a conventional system, but average across tillage at 6.7 bushel per acre. So that's the yield side of things. And then when we look at the nitrogen side of things, and so let's look at the red clover corn yield zero nitrogen slide.
This one?
Yep. That's right.
Okay, good.
So these are our corn yields, and we do not, or except for a little bit of starter fertilizer, about 12 kilograms per hectare of nitrogen in the starter. No nitrogen fertilizer was applied to these corn yields. And CC stands for continuous corn, and CS, corn soybean rotation, and then corn soybean wheat rotation, and then corn soybean wheat rotation underseeded with red clover. It's a green bars, and right there you can see just very clearly the effect of red clover, what it has in terms of nitrogen inputs in a tilled system and a plowed system versus a strip tilled system. It's just tremendous benefit. And if we go to the second, or another slide, Shaun, it is called the red clover nitrogen credit.
I don't.
Yeah, it's that one right there.
Yeah, right there in the bottom there.
Perfect. Yeah. Good. See, thank you.
So in a plowed system, and you can see that little annotation there, underseeded red clover provides about 70 pounds per acre of nitrogen. And so these are the maximum economic rates of nitrogen. And red clover in our trials, about 70 pounds per acre of nitrogen that red clover provides. And so it's right bang on with our recommendation that's in the OMAFRA agronomy guide. And so these trials fit that data, that recommendation almost perfectly. And you can see in the strip till system where we have a thinner red clover stand naturally, like we don't thicken these up. We apply underseed wheat to red clover, and we just take the red clover stand as is. Because we have that lower stand, reduced stand of red clover, of course, it doesn't have that nitrogen input that a good stand of red clover would have in, let's say, a plowed system. So we don't see quite that effect in a strip till system. So these are, I think, great benefits, and this is why we're like really focusing on this variability issue. We want to solve. I want to solve this for my own farm as well, because I'm frustrated on my own farm. In the past couple of years, I've kind of ditched red clover, but I know that it's important, and it hurts my heart not to have red clover in my cropping system. So I have other cover crops, of course, but I would love to work out or to figure out this red clover establishment issue.
Yeah. You want to show this picture?
Yeah, it's just kind of an intro slide. It's I just love spreading clover early March, and so it's one of my on my farm. I have a little spreader behind a tractor, and so I'm doing that early March. Late July, the stands look something like that. And one of my best cover crop stands was about this is about 12 years ago, I think, that picture was taken on the right there, mid October. And I wish I could get that every year. Dan gets this every year. It just makes me pound my head against the wall, that in jealousy. But I just wish that we could get a stand like that every year, because then we would realize all of these benefits every year.
Absolutely. Can bring us back.
So my favorite slide there is the end credit part, because that's the part where I don't struggle with the red clover establishment in that part. I struggle with the overall end credit. We don't recognize the end credit at all in our farm. Maybe I should. We're doing some research with Veritas and some partner organizations. There's a few of us who grow red clover, and we're going into year 3 to find N rates, or the variability of red clover, what kind of credit we can get. I have a spreadsheet, and I'll share it with anyone. I'll just tidy it up a little bit. The N credit, sometimes it's not worth kind of using, depending on the price of UAN and what it costs for you to put your seed on. Our red clover kind of yield bump into corn, we're sitting at 25 bushel-ish. So by ignoring the N credit, we're getting higher yield responses than what Dave's research is showing. His research his numbers are probably, most definitely are more rigorous than mine. Mine is just QuickBooks, a spreadsheet, and weigh wagons. And we just kind of skip the N credit because it's a variable that, hey, that nitrogen there is either for the soil biology, for the breakdown or promotion of our crop, or my corn crop will use it. I don't know. But this way, it's just a matter of when we go side dress, I don't have to think about who I put in that tractor, and they go side dress and the script is running. But those yield responses. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Dave. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. How much nitrogen do you put on your corn usually?
A lot. So we're at 75 pounds to 80 pounds at planting of actual. And then on my high yielding fields, so the farms that we've had since, I don't know, I'm 3rd generation now. And these are farms that will now, with as hybrids of corn have gotten better, yields are obviously going up. I'm putting, what's 60 gallons of 32%? So 60 times 3.5 0.55. So we're at almost 200 pounds of N. So we're talking 250 to 275 pounds of N actual. And we will pull 250 to 275 pounds bushel corn out of that, if not a little bit higher, because we recognize a lot of mineralization of our soil type.
I like soils at Guelph. Sending a message here. Not only do we have trouble wrapping our heads around Dan's clover catch, we also can't wrap our heads around you ignoring the N credit.
Well, Cam, we've talked about this, and it's just a matter of it's too hard to it's too variable across the soil types. So we have fields that we farm that go from CEC of 7 or 8, and then you go 300 yards to the east, and now we're talking a CEC of 21 to 26. So now my prescription rate for my N when I side dress is based on soil type. Most people don't have mapping done that way. It's based on yield potential. Most people don't really have a good firm grounding of that. And then you've got to go measure like the stand and figure out and go take like nitrate tests out of your soil to see where you truly are. Or is that wrong thinking, Dave?
Well, I think you're on the right track. I think, and Cam mentioned variable rate nitrogen, but I think maybe because you are pulling off so high, like your corn yields are so high, maybe you are using some of that nitrogen from the red clover. Like even though that your fertilizer and rates are 200 pounds to the acre, maybe you are using some of, and the only way to find out, of course, is to do some strip trials on your farm, and you're doing that.
Hey guys, question here from Jason, and I'll put it up. Just hold on here one sec. There we go. We've talked a lot about red clover, but with cover crops, there are others, or there's other cover crops, of course, and there's combinations as well. What about the importance or relevance of, say, a 15 species cover crop mix being promoted in Manitoba? And there's a follow-up to that. I'll get that in here. Pete says, Jason, multi-species is a lot of great thought and discussion that rarely does any better than single species. So let's talk about, because there is, there's people pushing like these, these very complex, I don't know if complex is the right word, but there's a lot of combinations and permutations in what you're putting in the ground. So what's our thought on single versus multi?
Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, yeah, well, like we're doing quite a bit of work with multi-species versus single species. And of course, with small plot trials, we're looking at data, we're measuring the crop, we're measuring, let's say, the soil and the crop and succeeding crops for differences. And it's really hard to find any differences between the multi-species and a good crop of single species. But we realize theoretically, that one species might do better in one area of the field, and another species might do better in in another area. And so we've got some of these areas maybe where we could take advantage of a little bit more diversity. And so that's the theory, and it sounds great, but it's just very difficult to measure any differences. We looked at biomass, the cover crop, root biomass, and it just can't find significant differences in any of these comparisons. Like there's once in a while we do have some differences, and once we had like a couple years ago we had a severe crown rust infestation in our oat, and the companion species in that oat mixture, of course, they did very well. And so that's one scenario, an example, where if we just went with a single species of oat, and if it became infested with the disease, that means that cover crop probably would not do very well. But I just think that maybe we should just reduce our expectations. We should have realistic expectations for diversity, and maybe it's not as like a pie in the sky as some make it out to be. I think it's a good thought process, but maybe not a pie in the sky.
Well, Ryan says 10 plus species mixes haven't increased yields in PEI and caused some weed issues. Peter says one of the issues is that the species that survives the best often are also the most likely to be a weed problem. Common theme
The
there,
perfect
Dan.
the perfect species of that, like to both of their comments, would be annual ryegrass. So
Yeah.
as this cover crop wave or excitement or fanaticism, whatever the heck we want to call it, as the first species that a lot of people, and I am guilty of this as well, we all jumped on annual ryegrass. We can seed it into our corn, and we can plant green, we can do all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
goes to seed like crazy. It'll get away on you like crazy, and it will start to develop herbicide resistance quite easy depending on your source of seed, like the actual pedigree of seed. Not all annual ryegrasses are the same annual ryegrass.
Yeah.
So our cover crop approach is what's cheap, what's available, what's easy to manage. Red clover for me and my wheat, into my soybeans, or where red clover doesn't establish, because it still doesn't establish for us in the drowned out spots or the high traffic spots, like we just beat it to death. So then I go seed cereal rye because I'm surrounded by the stuff, and I can buy it for like $1 a bushel, or oats, or well, Ryan just said buckwheat can be troublesome too. I love buckwheat if I'm not going to grow clover. I solid seed buckwheat like crazy, and it is my second favorite cover crop because it's relatively cheap. It acts like a tillage pass because I can no-till anything into that the following year. And with our program, because we're reliant on Group 27s and atrazine and all that shit in our corn, and we have all kinds of options in our beans, and we just go nuke it.
Okay. Let's. I don't think we have time for the Lynch clip on tillage, but let's see here. Farmer Schneck asks, "We all strive for that picturesque, thick, lush cover crop, and then we get it, and it is very intimidating as fall strip till time approaches. What is the best plan to deal with that big clover cover crop?"
That's super quick and super easy. After that first kind of like slap in the face frost in November for us, so Warren, that'd be like a month sooner where you live. We go spray the low rate of Distinct and 1.5 liters of any 540 glyphosate product. So I'll use Transorb or Credit, and you just go nail. So you get that frost event. Usually you get a little warm-up spell when the plants are starting to kind of re-energize. And after that frost event, what they're doing is sending carbs down to the root for overwintering. So you go lay these herbicides on, and they are screwed come springtime.
Yeah. Perfect.
And we still do like in our big clover stands, like where they're above my knees or like mid-thigh, we go make a strip till pass in the fall just to predefine our lines. And that would be typically 2 weeks before we do the herbicide pass.
So I got to be honest here. We didn't play any of the clips. Dave submitted some fantastic videos that he shot, and the audience in the chat is giving me a super hard time. And most of all, it's Ray. So I want to point out, Ray, I see what you're typing about me, and I'm watching you very closely. Hey, okay, let's. Pete had a really good suggestion how to wrap up here. Where is it? Here we go. Okay, let's wrap up with a list of best practices for red clover and what to seed into my red clover if it doesn't establish. Even though we are being positive, I don't know why Pete's taking a negative end there. But okay, let's do it. Dave, you first.
Well, I'm not sure why I'm first because Dan is the red clover guru. He should be the one. Come on.
Okay, Dan first then. Sure.
Yeah, I have failed stands. I'm not the one to ask that question.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, farm where I farm.
That's well, okay, but
outside of that,
there's going to be a mass influx to Port Rowan because they can grow clover.
Gladly. $40,000-$50,000 an acre. Come take it.
Yeah.
So basically, what we do.
So seeding.
I'll just reiterate what I did before. Seeding rate, 12 pounds. But figure out what works. Like just start going go rates. Like we built our own airflow to go seed it, so we have consistent drop. We've eliminated group 2s, but these are all things that where there is research and data showing that these aren't provable points or that matter, but it's a synergy of things. So high seeding rate, no group 2s, lots of sulfur. And really row width helps like kind of like in-season mortality, but it doesn't really help, doesn't matter for the initial establishment of the plant. The other thing, and we just have lots of residue and we spread on top of it. There are no, those are my best management practices, but I don't know if they're going to be
Dan,
yours.
when you say lots of sulfur, like how much sulfur are you talking
Up to
about?
20 pounds actual. And we do a
Right.
single pass of nitrogen on our wheat. And that's mainly because when I want to go do my first pass, we're too soft. Like I'll just cut the field apart. So that would be, we're throwing 150 pounds of N, and now we're up to 20 pounds of sulfur. And half that sulfur, it's mostly for the clover.
And when do you seed your red clover?
Third week of February, or the last week of February, depending on the snowfall.
Okay.
Basically,
what about seeding too?
Go, sorry. Yeah.
Can you seed too early?
I don't know. Haven't yet.
Okay.
So, and what told me, there's an old timer. He's passed away. Like he's long gone now, but I still remember as like a young dude, well, 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, and he would say, like, come and ride, and we're gonna go spread clover. And he would show me, and he was going like the middle of February in snow that was 1.5 to 2 feet thick. And he's like, it'll go down, but that's regional, right? Like our snow melts will be different than other places. So
yeah, one of my colleagues at Ridgetown, fantastic red clover stand every year, just like you, Dan. And what he does is applies 1/2 rate in I think at the end of February, and applies the other half rate, the last half, in like a month later or so.
So there you spread your
passes over the field. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, actually, that's a great idea. We're going to try that. I'm going to write it down, too.
Perfect stuff. Well, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, Peter, I think, mentioned about alternatives to red clover. And so if you have a variable stand, I think, that field, that field that I took the video of last night, I think that would be a good candidate field to do something with now. Like still have lots of growing season left, especially in southern Ontario. And I think that grower needs to do something, needs to drill some or broadcast some oats or anything that will establish fairly quickly. And maybe this is where, buckwheat might come in, Dan.
Exactly. That's where we would go buckwheat and oats. And it would be 20 pounds of buckwheat and 10 pounds of oats, because I love buckwheat. And what we do for the buckwheat, we monetize it, and we'll have local beekeepers that didn't want to drop their hives. And it's $50 an acre for the field. And then I want 5 pounds of honey.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. That's good.
Oh, yeah. And buckwheat, well, then it's a whole nother management thing, but buckwheat's awesome and it's fast. And it has wireworm suppression capability, especially for the potato people.
Cool. Hey, guys, this has been Farmer's Nexus. I'm liking my double crop soybeans as a cover crop. There you go.
When they freeze in middle of September, though, Warren.
Oh, come on. And Pete says, do not let that buckwheat go to seed. No.
All mine goes to seed.
Buckwheat honey, yum. Oh, fantastic stuff. Hey, this has been a lot of fun. We had such a great discussion tonight. We had so much participation from the audience. We didn't even have to play any clips. Dave brought some great images as well as some graphs, some fantastic information. Really appreciate everybody joining us. Hey, Dave, thanks so much for being here tonight.
Oh, thank you. Great to be here. Awesome.
Yeah, and Dan, you as well. Love the energy around red clover. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us.
Fun. Super fun.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Hey, I want to remind everybody, tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, we've got a special edition of the Agronomists, Ontario Diagnostic Days. We are going to have an absolute great time. Yes, they are. The videos are fantastic. Awesome. And Dave makes an appearance. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Everybody, thank you so much for being here tonight for the Agronomists, getting real and getting connected with real agriculture. And we'll see you again tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, realagriculture.com/live.